If someone told me 6 months ago that my biggest mistake wasn't trusting her, but trusting myself not to see the truth, I would have laughed. But here I am, wishing I'd trusted my gut instead of my heart. We'd been married 8 years. Long enough to settle into the comfortable routines. Inside jokes no one else gets, a shared hatred of the neighbor's Christmas lights, knowing exactly how she takes her coffee before she even opens her mouth. It wasn't fireworks every day, but it was real. Or at least, it was supposed to be. We met through mutual friends at a wedding, funny enough, not ours, and hit it off fast. She was bold, sharp-witted, the kind of woman who could light up a room and scare the hell out of half the people in it at the same time. I loved that about her. Still do, if I'm being honest. Or maybe I just loved who I thought she was. The first time I heard her mention her ex-fiance, it was a joke. Something harmless. "He's probably still crying over me," she said once after too many glasses of wine. I laughed because she laughed. Didn't think much of it. Everyone has a past, right? Hell, if we're being honest, I wasn't exactly a saint before we met either. But as time went on, little things kept cropping up. A song would come on the radio and she'd go quiet. A restaurant we'd pass on the highway and she'd tighten her grip on the steering wheel. Once, when her phone buzzed late at night, she glanced at it, face blank, and flipped it over faster than I could blink. Said it was just spam. I didn't ask. Because trust is the foundation, right? You don't go poking around for trouble unless you want to find it. And I didn't want to find anything. Still, there were cracks. Little ones. Weekend trips she'd forget to tell me about until the night before. New outfits, short, tight, the kind she swore she grew out of years ago. Late nights at work events that I somehow was never invited to. If I asked even a casual question, the wall went up. "You're smothering me," she'd say. "God, you're so controlling." Controlling. That was rich, coming from the woman who once threatened to burn my Xbox if I didn't clean out the garage. But I let it go. Again and again I let it go. Because the alternative, admitting the woman I loved might be lying to my face, was too damn painful. Then came the party invitation. Some old college friend of hers was throwing a reunion bash. All the usual suspects would be there, former classmates, old flames, the whole nostalgic circus. She hesitated when she mentioned it. Said it was probably gonna be boring. Said I didn't have to come if I didn't want to. I offered to skip it. Told her to go have fun, catch up, embarrass herself with bad karaoke, the usual. She smiled, that tight, stretched smile I was starting to hate, and said, "Maybe it's better that way." At the time, I thought I was being a good husband. Giving her space. Showing trust. Turns out, I was just giving her enough rope to hang me with. The night of the party, I stayed home. Made myself a sad bachelor dinner, frozen pizza and a six-pack. Played video games until my thumbs hurt. Tried not to imagine her laughing in some guy's arms while I sat alone on our couch. Tried and failed. At some point I crashed out. Woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing against the coffee table. A text from a buddy, someone who didn't even know she was at a party that night. He was at the same venue, randomly. "Dude, not sure if you know about this, but your wife's here. And she's kinda close with some guy. Thought you should know." No name. No photos. Just that. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I sat there, staring at the screen, the TV's glow flickering across the room like some sick joke. I could have stayed put. Could have waited it out. Pretended I didn't see it. Pretended none of this was happening. But something inside me, something primal and furious and heartbroken, wouldn't let me. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Because sometimes you don't find the truth. Sometimes the truth finds you. And it doesn't knock politely. It kicks the damn door down. I drove faster than I should have. Hands tight on the steering wheel, mind racing with every ugly scenario I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore anymore. By the time I pulled up to the venue, some big rented-out hall in the city, My heart was hammering so hard I could barely think straight. I sat there for a minute, breathing, telling myself I was being crazy. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe my buddy saw her hugging an old friend. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. After all, we trusted each other, right? 8 years meant something. Right. I walked into the hall and got hit with a wall of noise. Laughing, shouting, bad music blasting from rented speakers. Flashing lights, cheap beer, and enough body spray to choke a horse. I scanned the room. Dozens of faces, none I recognized. My buddy was right, it was packed. Old college types reliving the glory days, with cheap drinks and bad decisions. At first, I didn't see her. I almost turned around. Almost convinced myself to just go home, sleep it off, pretend this night never happened. But then I caught a glimpse of her across the room. She was at the bar. Smiling. Laughing. Holding a drink. And leaning in way too close to a man I didn't know. At least, not at first. It took a second for it to click. The way he stood, the way he looked at her like she was some lost treasure finally returned. And then it hit me. The ex-fiance. The same one she joked about. The one who, according to her, was ancient history. I didn't move closer. Just stood there, half hidden by the crowd, watching her brush his arm with her fingers. Casual. Easy. Too easy. And the worst part? She looked happy. Lighter than she ever looked when she walked through our front door lately. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People get sentimental at these things. Old flames remember the good times and forget why they burned out in the first place. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was just old friends catching up. Maybe. I left without saying anything. Didn't want to make a scene. Didn't want to embarrass myself if I was wrong. I got back in my truck, slammed the door, and sat there staring at the dashboard. My mind was spinning. Questions eating me alive. Why was she so damn comfortable around him? Why didn't she tell me he'd be there? Why did she act like it was just another boring party? When she got home later that night, she was all smiles. Smelled like cheap beer and expensive perfume. Plopped down next to me on the couch like nothing was wrong. Told me she missed me. That she wished I'd come. Laughed about old friends and bad music. Made no mention of him. Not a word. Not even a casual. Guess who showed up? It was like he didn't exist. I asked how it was. She shrugged. Same old. Boring without you. Boring. I stared at her for a long time, trying to find any sign she was lying. But she was good. Too good. Maybe she wasn't even lying. Maybe the worst betrayal isn't sleeping with someone else. Maybe it's smiling in your husband's face while someone else already lives rent-free in your heart. Still, no proof. Nothing solid. Just 100 little gut punches I wasn't ready to call a knockout. I went to bed that night with her arm draped over me, heavy and careless, and stared at the ceiling until morning. Over the next few days, things felt different. Not better. Not worse. Just different. She was almost too affectionate. Bringing home takeout from my favorite spot. Buying beer she never remembered I liked. Little things that felt more like guilt offerings than love. One night she suggested a weekend getaway. Said we needed time together. Said she found a cabin out by the lake, just us and the woods. I wanted to say no. Wanted to call her out. Wanted to ask what changed, why she suddenly remembered I existed. But I didn't. Because somewhere, deep down, I still wanted to believe. Still wanted to give her a chance. Still wanted to give myself a reason not to walk away. I said yes. I smiled. I kissed her. And I told myself, this is how we fix it. This is how we find our way back. Because sometimes hope is the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself. And I was still lying, if only to delay the inevitable. The weekend at the lake started off better than I expected. The cabin was small, old school, tucked back in the woods where cell service barely existed. She looked lighter out there. No makeup, no tight dresses, no stiff body language. Just her in a hoodie and a smile that, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel forced. We spent the first night drinking cheap wine by the fire pit, talking about stupid stuff, favorite songs, worst vacations, old dreams we half remembered. It felt almost normal. Better than normal, even. It felt like the woman I married was still in there somewhere, under all the distance and coldness. And for the first time in months, I thought maybe it was me. Maybe I let stress get to me. Maybe I built monsters out of shadows. Maybe I almost blew up my marriage because I was too damn scared to trust. The second day, we hiked up the trail behind the cabin. Nothing crazy, just a couple of miles, an easy loop. Halfway up, she slipped on some loose gravel and fell. Not bad, just a skin knee. I reached for her instinctively. She pulled away. For a second, something cold flashed across her face, annoyance, maybe even disgust. But then it was gone. Replaced with a tight smile and a "I'm fine, don't make a big deal about it." We finished the hike, laughing about how out of shape we were. But that split second stuck with me. Buried itself somewhere under the hope I was clinging to. That night, curled up in bed, she whispered, "I'm glad we came." I kissed the top of her head and said, "Me too." And I meant it. Because the truth was, I didn't want to believe she was capable of doing what my gut had been screaming at me for weeks. I didn't want to believe the woman I trusted more than anyone had it in her to lie to my face. It was easier to believe I was crazy. Easier to believe the problem was mine to fix. So I did. I let it go. I buried every suspicion, every half-caught glance, every uncomfortable silence. I told myself we were good. I told myself this was what healing looked like, messy, slow, but possible. When we got back home, things stayed good. Better than good. She started making plans for the holidays. Started talking about redecorating the living room, something we'd put off for years. Started asking me about my day again, actually listening instead of zoning out on her phone. Small things. Important things. Things that made me think maybe the worst was behind us. Maybe she really did just need space. Maybe seeing old friends stirred up old memories, but they didn't mean anything. Maybe she chose me. Still chose me. One Saturday morning, I caught her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She was smiling at something. Typing fast. When I came up behind her, she slammed the lid shut like a guilty teenager. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. But then she laughed. "This Christmas shopping thing is gonna bankrupt us," she joked, sliding the laptop away. I laughed too. Because I wanted to. Because I needed to. Because if I stopped laughing, I might have started asking questions I wasn't ready to hear the answers to. That night, we went to dinner with friends. First time in months. She looked gorgeous, bright-eyed, laughing, telling stories like the old days. Everyone kept saying how good we looked together. How happy we seemed. And for a few hours I let myself believe it. Let myself lean back in my chair, watch her light up the room, and feel proud that she was mine. I didn't think about the party anymore. Didn't think about the ex-fiance or the way she leaned into him like muscle memory. Didn't think about the text my buddy sent. I buried it. Sealed it off somewhere deep inside. Because marriage isn't about being perfect. It's about pushing through the hard parts. Trusting the person you said forever to, even when it's easier not to. A few days later, she mentioned another party coming up. Another reunion, this time bigger, some charity fundraiser that a lot of her old college friends were putting together. I asked if she wanted me to come. For once, she said yes. Said it would be nice to have me there. That it would be good for me to see her world. The way she said it made my chest warm. Made me think maybe she was trying. Maybe she realized how much damage the distance had done. Maybe we were finally back on the same page. She bought a new dress for the event. Black. Tight. The kind of thing that turned heads when she walked into a room. When she tried it on at home, she twirled around, laughing, asking what I thought. I told her she looked beautiful. Because she did. Because no matter how broken things felt sometimes, no matter how deep the doubts ran, she would always be the most beautiful thing in the room to me. The night of the party, I felt good. Hopeful. Even excited. Maybe it would be the fresh start we needed. Maybe seeing her among old friends, introducing me like I mattered, would be the proof I needed to finally shut the door on all the ugly thoughts clawing at the back of my mind. We drove there together. Hand in hand. Laughing. Talking about dumb stuff, traffic, work, where we might go for vacation next year. Everything felt easy. Natural. Good. We pulled up to the venue, bigger this time, a real ballroom rented out for the event. Music floated through the open doors. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, the hum of 100 conversations at once. She squeezed my hand before we walked in. "I'm glad you're here," she said, her eyes bright under the fairy lights strung up across the entrance. I smiled. Squeezed her hand back. Told her, "Me too." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I believed we were okay. I believed we made it through the storm. I didn't know it then. But by the end of the night, I would see exactly how wrong I was. The ballroom was packed. Glittering lights, expensive suits, and enough perfume in the air to start a small fire. She looked radiant, the kind of radiant that makes you forget how much it hurts to doubt someone. She introduced me to people I didn't know. Old classmates. Co-workers. Friends of friends. Everyone was smiles and small talk. Polite laughter. Polite compliments. Polite lies, maybe? She was good at working the room. Better than I ever realized. She floated from group to group like she belonged there, laughing, hugging, telling stories where I was just another background character. I stuck close at first, trying not to feel out of place. Trying not to notice how often she drifted just out of reach. How often she leaned in too close to people when she thought I wasn't looking. How easily she slipped into conversations that I wasn't part of, conversations that stopped when I stepped closer. After a while, I found myself standing near the bar, nursing a drink and pretending to be busy on my phone. Watching. Not accusing. Not paranoid. Just watching. That's when I saw him. The ex-fiance. He wasn't hard to spot. Taller than most, sharp in a way that didn't feel natural. Like he was playing a role he thought would impress the crowd. I watched him glide through the party like he owned it. Saw the way people looked at him, half admiration, half caution. The kind of man who burns bridges with a smile. He found her fast. Like gravity pulling two objects together. They hugged. Longer than polite. Longer than necessary. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm lightly, the same casual, intimate way I'd seen her touch me when we first started dating. Something cold settled in my gut. Still, no proof. No kiss. No whispered declarations. No sneaking off into dark corners. Just two old friends catching up. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Because sometimes it's easier to cling to hope than to face the hole someone's punched through your chest. I stayed near the bar. Watched her float around. Watched him trail after her. Watched the two of them lock into private little conversations where the rest of the world blurred and faded. Once or twice, she caught me looking. Smiled. Waved. Like everything was fine. Like I was the crazy one for feeling like the floor was tilting under my feet. At some point, a group photo was organized. Old classmates gathering near the back of the room, laughing and squeezing together. She called me over. Grabbed my hand. Pulled me into the edge of the shot, smiling wide. Pretending. God, she was good at pretending. The photographer snapped the photo. Everyone clapped and cheered. Someone popped a bottle of champagne nearby, spraying foam into the air. She laughed. Tilted her head back, carefree and beautiful and miles away from me. I kissed her temple. Felt her flinch, just slightly, before she leaned in like nothing happened. Later, she disappeared for a while. Said she needed to freshen up. I waited near the dance floor, nursing another drink. Minutes ticked by. 10. 15. I looked toward the restrooms. No sign of her. I wandered a little, pretending to make small talk with people I barely knew, keeping one eye on the crowd. And that's when I saw them again, her and him, tucked into a corner near the balcony doors. Close. Too close. His hand on her waist. Her face tilted up toward him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long, long time. I froze. Part of me wanted to march over there, drag her away, demand answers she probably didn't even plan on giving. Another part of me, the smarter part, said wait. Just wait. Because when people show you who they are, it's better to watch them do it than force them into a confession they'll only try to weasel out of. So I waited. Stayed just out of sight. Watching the woman I loved unravel herself for someone else. Eventually, she pulled away. Straightened her dress. Smoothed her hair. Glanced around the room like she knew what she was doing was wrong but couldn't quite bring herself to care. Then she came back to me. Smiling. Laughing. Sliding her hand into mine like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just handed my heart to another man for safekeeping. We stayed another hour. Pretending. Drinking. Smiling for photos. Chatting with strangers. The whole time, I kept waiting for her to slip again. To let the mask crack. To give me something undeniable. But she didn't. She played her role perfectly. And I played mine, the loving husband who didn't know he was standing at the edge of a cliff. By the time we left, I wasn't angry. Wasn't hurt. Wasn't even surprised. I was just tired. Bone-deep tired in a way I didn't know was possible. Because betrayal isn't one sharp stab. It's slow. It's 1,000 tiny cuts that bleed you dry before you even realize you're dying. She drove us home. Sang along softly to the radio like nothing had happened. Reached over to squeeze my hand at a red light. And I squeezed back. Because I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not tonight. Not until I was sure she knew exactly how badly she'd lost. The plan started forming in my head before we even pulled into the driveway. Cold. Quiet. Simple. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to show her what real consequences look like. Because she thought she had the upper hand. Thought she could dance with her past right under my nose and I'd just smile and wave. But what she didn't know, what she could never have guessed, was that I was done playing the fool. The next morning, I woke up before she did. I watched her sleep for a minute, wondering how someone could look so peaceful with a heart so dirty. I wasn't angry anymore. Not sad either. I felt empty. The kind of empty you feel right before you do something you know you'll never take back. And I was ready. I got dressed quietly, grabbed my keys, and drove into town. Picked up a few things I needed. Nothing dramatic. No private investigators or grand schemes. Just something simple. Something final. Because when you're done, you don't need fireworks. You just need clarity. She texted me around noon. Where'd you go? I didn't answer. I let her stew for a bit. Let her wonder. Because if there's one thing cheaters hate, it's not knowing what you know. I came back home mid-afternoon. Found her sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone, fake casual like she hadn't been sweating bullets for hours. She smiled when I walked in. Forced. Tight. Hey, babe, she said, all syrup and sunshine. Busy morning? Yeah, I said, tossing my keys on the counter. Had some errands. She nodded, pretending not to be dying inside. Cool. I was thinking we could grill tonight. Maybe have a little date night. Her voice cracked just a little on date night. I almost laughed. Almost. I set the bag I brought on the table. Pulled out a small stack of printed photos. The photographer from the party had posted all the shots online. Open gallery. Anyone could download them. I printed the important ones. The ones where she wasn't looking at me. The ones where her body language screamed everything her mouth wouldn't say. The way she stood just a little too close to him. The way her hand brushed his. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one else was watching. I slid the photos across the table without a word. Watched her face. Watched the color drain from her cheeks. Watched the fake smile collapse under the weight of real panic. She picked up the first photo with shaking hands. "I can explain," she said immediately. "Textbook. Predictable." I raised an eyebrow. "Explain what?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. "It wasn't anything. It was stupid. I had too much to drink. It was old memories. That's all it was." Her voice cracked hard this time. I stayed silent. Let her scramble. Let her dig her own grave one shaky sentence at a time. Finally, when it was clear I wasn't going to jump in and rescue her, she switched tactics. Anger. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." Classic. "If you loved me, you'd forgive a stupid mistake." There it was, trying to turn it around, trying to make me the bad guy. I smiled then. Not a warm smile. Not a forgiving smile. A cold, tired smile. The smile of a man who knows exactly what he's worth. And knows he's worth more than this. I stood up. Picked up my keys. Tossed a small envelope onto the table. Inside? The separation papers I'd already signed that morning. Lawyered up. Tidy. Done. Her face crumpled. She lunged across the table, grabbing my wrist. "You can't just leave!" I looked down at her hand like it was a bug crawling on me. Shook it off. "I already did," I said. Turned on my heel and walked out the front door without looking back. The sun was bright and sharp outside. Felt good on my skin. Clean. Free. I slid into my truck, engine humming low and steady, and pulled away from the house without a glance in the rearview mirror. Because you don't look back at a place that stopped being home a long time ago. She blew up my phone for days after that. Calls. Texts. Emails. Everything from crying to screaming to begging. I didn't answer a single one. Because when someone shows you what they're capable of, you don't ask for an encore. You take the first act, and you get the hell out. The divorce was quick. Painless, on my end. She tried to fight it at first, tried to twist it into me being controlling, or abusive, or whatever else she thought would stick. But the evidence was there. Photos. Witnesses from the party. People who'd seen the way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. She folded fast when she realized she wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting the truth. I kept the house. The car. My dignity. She got a lease on a tiny apartment, and a reputation she'd never scrubbed clean. Now I'm rebuilding. Not looking for revenge. Not chasing closure. Just living. Breathing free air. Sleeping easy. Laughing for real, not because I'm trying to pretend things are okay. Sometimes people ask if I miss her. If I regret walking away after 8 years. I tell them the truth. I don't miss who she became. I miss who I thought she was. But once you realize it was all an act, all a lie, there's nothing left to miss. Just lessons learned. And freedom earned. If she's happy with him, her sloppy, cowardly ex, then good for her. She's right where she belongs. And me? I'm exactly where I belong too. Far, far away.